All right.
Here we go.
Welcome back to another episode of the Merge Feast. I am Blake, joined with Logan and Brandon. What's up, guys?
Hello, Blake.
Hello, how's it going?
Going well, going well. Man, this is a fun episode, and I'm excited to get into it. Um, I don't even know where to start. Um, Brandon, I know you've got a lot of opinion, so kick us off. Where
Sure.
do you want to begin? There's a lot to discuss this week.
Oh boy. I'll say this. I'll open the episode, or at least my thoughts, by saying, and I texted this to you guys before the show. I think, and I don't think it's recency bias. Maybe you can talk me down. I think this was the best episode of the new era. So from season 41 to 47, I think this is the best episode that we've seen. I was basically, since right after the reward challenge, I was on the edge of my seat. Like, my heart was pumping. I was into it and invested in every little thing that was happening, and like completely rooting for Operation Italy to work.
Yep.
And the way that production edited it, made it, presented it to us like it was a heist. Hats off to them. And just Andy's just so smart, man. Like, I don't know how he does it. Like, he has people underestimating him all season long. The dude is just smart. He thinks of things that I don't think anybody else thinks of. Like, the way that he had that idea in his mind, like, I don't think I would have ever thought of that, let alone flipping. Like, why would you flip? Right? But he sees it as good as a good play for him. And him doing that gave us, again, one of the best episodes I've seen in a long time. So super happy, excited, and like cannot wait for what's to come next week with everything that went down. But I could keep going and going, so I'll let one of you guys talk. It was fantastic. Like, no notes. It was great.
That is hard to follow, and kind of upset that I have to. No, I could not agree more. This episode was phenomenal from start to finish. Andy, mastermind. Like, the way he thought of everything, put it together, and it actually happened. I think Genevieve had some help in that, obviously Genevieve and Sam, but at the tribal council, want to go over some of that with Genevieve and the whole idol thing. But what a phenomenal episode from start to finish.
Couldn't agree more. This is probably my favorite season of the new era, and I think easily the best episode I have ever seen. And man, I feel like such an idiot for discounting Andy so early on. And I know we said this last week, but Brandon, you saw that way before any of us, and I found myself every single week, at least recently, and even more this week, is like, Andy's going to win this game. Andy might be the best player left in the game. And I know I've thought for a while on, like, okay, is the jury going to see what we are seeing? And you kind of got a glimpse of it at the end, and we'll get into that. But I think the jury picked up on that, hey, this was Andy's move. Andy flipped. Andy orchestrated this. And because I think he was strategic there at the end where he said, I'll explain. I will be And I know it's still anybody's game, but I will be very, very surprised if Andy doesn't win.
Yeah. I, to stay on the genius that was Operation Italy, everything that happened by the time that Andy, Sam, and Genevieve set foot back on the Becca beach was planned. They were on a script. From the moment they stepped back to the moment the votes were read, they had everything planned out. And I've seen great elaborate plans in Survivor. I can think of the Black Widow Brigade tricking Eric into giving up his immunity necklace in Micronesia. One of the greatest plays ever. What they pulled off tonight, I would put up next to that.
100%.
Yep.
100%.
And not only pulling it off, but how they went about it. And even with Andy going back to the underdog alliance and talking about, oh, like I'm worried about an idol and hinting at that, and other people bringing up, what if we split the vote? So planting those seeds, being the one that planted them, but not fully coming up with that. In a way, they don't know he came up with that, but like just working that out, man.
Let's go back to kind of the beginning of the episode and kind of set the stage. But the the conversation with Genevieve and Andy at the beginning, one, I really love kind of the what is it, the internal struggle, I guess, with Genevieve and her kind of finding herself and kind of realizing like, hey, I was this strategic player, and I realized that kind of came and hurt my game a little bit, and so now I've got to play totally different. It was a really cool moment between her and Andy, and I think that conversation between her and Andy set the stage for him to say, maybe I'm willing to work with you. And because I could be wrong, but I wonder if she didn't have that conversation with Andy, if he would have still been on board to go with them. Like he saw that the human side of Genevieve and that relationship side of like, okay, I want to work with you now. And then totally the flip side between Genevieve and Teeny. I was curious your guys's thoughts on how Teeny handled the entire thing, from the conversation with Genevieve at the beach where Genevieve had said that Rachel's the biggest threat, and if she goes to the end, we think she's going to win. Teeny took that incredibly personally, and Genevieve said, like, I'm not saying that I wouldn't vote for you, but I'd have a hard time not voting for Rachel. And 100% valid. But Teeny was like, what the heck? And then from then on, it was just a spiral with Teeny. So I'm curious your guys' thoughts on those two conversations with Genevieve.
I honestly was not a fan of Teeny this week. I think the way she handled the Genevieve, I think she's very much in her emotions right now. And even to later in the episode, not being picked for the reward and some of that, I think the way she handled that, and it almost felt to me, and I don't want this to come off, I guess, in like a bad way or like a rude way, but it almost felt like she felt entitled to go on the reward challenge with Sam. And I don't know, I wasn't a fan of Teeny at all this week. I don't think she played. It wasn't a good episode for her, in my opinion.
So regarding the conversations, and I want to add to your point too, Logan, but regarding the conversations with Genevieve and Andy, and then Genevieve and Teeny, Genevieve is clearly a smart player and clearly understands when she needs to adjust her game and kind of edit herself. And I think that's what we saw with her conversation with Andy. Like, hey, I clearly had a misstep. I'm willing to own that. Let's let bygones be bygones. And, leave that door open because obviously Genevieve's back is against the wall. And then the conversation with Teeny, again, shooting your shot. Hey, what do you think of this? Like, I just want you to kind of see what I'm seeing. Like, see, you're in this majority, but you're playing with who I think is going to win the game. Do you want to do that when you could, have an opportunity? Like, keep me here, take her out. Maybe you take me out next week. And then moving on, Teeny's kind of played with emotions, I think, the whole game. But I think the way that I saw Teeny this week was somebody that finally has or feels like they have power in the game and kind of having a different attitude and approach to the game because they know or feel that they're in this majority alliance and I'm in control and I can kind of strong arm or be abrasive and aggressive because I'm not, I'm in a good spot. You're not. You have to answer to me now. That's kind of how I felt Teeny was this week. And I didn't necessarily have a problem with it. In fact, I was kind of happy to see Teeny kind of, take those steps. Part of it is because I picked Teeny to win the game. And I'm like, oh, finally, like a spark. I saw a spark in Teeny, I think. And also, Teeny's impression of Sam was hilarious. Like, that killed me. That cracked me up. So, like, great moment in the episode. But I didn't necessarily, like, think Teeny looked bad this week. I think that was Teeny with power and maybe not quite being able to hone in having that power, if that makes sense.
Well, that's kind of been Teeny's whole game. And I think you're spot on, but anytime she's landed on the majority and what she felt like was like where the votes were going, she seems to have been left out again. And I have a hard time seeing how she's going to win the game because she has not been on the right side of so many votes. Now she's making it, far, but it is a good take that is, and you're right. It is kind of a spark that we needed to see from Teeny. It just didn't. I don't think it helped her game at all because of how everything landed, and I don't know if that's. I don't think that's a result of how she played it, but that everybody else was playing it better, and she just kind of got blindsided once again.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I hadn't really thought about the way you talked about Teeny and what happened this week, Brandon. And I think you make a good point there. I think having that comfortability of knowing you have the majority alliance and feel comfortable there and can speak out a little bit more and some of that. I get that. And I didn't really see it that way. I still wasn't a fan of her, but I get why some of that. So I appreciate your take.
Hey, that's what this is about. So I was just like a big jump backwards in the episode, but I was curious what you guys thought of Sue at the beginning of the episode, kind of talking about Kyle.
I'm trying to remember what all she said.
I know she talked about like him saying something along the lines of calling her the Tweedledee Tweedledum and bringing some of that up, but
really kind of what I think validated a lot of people's feelings about her specifically and how she's clearly like was voting emotionally and just had like a personal issue with Kyle because she even said like, now we don't have to deal with Kyle being the center of attention and being the story. And, he called us Tweedledee and Tweedledum, which I don't know if you guys saw it. Kyle had an exit interview and he clarified what that meant, what Tweedledee and Tweedledum meant. And I didn't know this either, but he said, in his circle, Tweedledee and Tweedledum means two people that are alike, two people that are connected, which Caroline and Sue are very connected. I don't think he meant it, as like these two were idiots. I think he's just saying it to connect two people, but
Yeah, like two peas in a pod kind of deal.
yeah. Yep.
Well, and on that note, I mean, this past week there was a lot of drama around with Rome, and I know Rome's been out of the game for a while, but there was a whole thing that he said when he left, like kind of it was like a week or two after he had left the game. He started talking about how Kyle had said this horrible stuff that didn't make the cut, and he wasn't going to repeat any of it because he's just not that kind of a person, but yet he still wanted to talk about it continuously. And then he brought it up again now that Kyle was gone, and it just, none of it made any sense to me. And I don't know if I'm just missing something, but for Kyle to go out on such a high note and production to paint Kyle in such a good light, and then to have Rome say that he said all this horrible things that he can't repeat, and even Gabe kind of clapped back at him and was like, "You're an idiot. You're kind of a clown. Like, what are you doing?" And then it correct me if I'm wrong, but I think Rome even deleted that tweet. So I don't know. The whole thing around Kyle was just so weird, and Sue clearly didn't like Kyle, but it didn't seem like that had anything to do with what Rome was talking about. And I think Rome even clarified that he's not talking about the Tweedledee and Tweedledum. Like there was something else, and I just don't buy it.
So here's what I think. Knowing how Rome played the game, he thought that he was the best player ever, and he ended up being a pre-merge boot, which, unless your name's Boston Rob, if you're a pre-merge boot, that's usually the end of your story, right? So he gets on and, says Kyle said all these terrible things. Now, if you remember when Rome got eliminated, he was trying to stir up a bunch of stuff about Kyle and trying to paint the target on Kyle, right? So his grand plan of getting Kyle out didn't work. People didn't buy it. They sided with Kyle. Rome got sent home. And then you have Rome saying, "Oh, Kyle said all these terrible things." I'm not going to say what it is, but, I'm going to say that it happened. Then obviously last week we get Kyle clarifying like, yeah, it's the Tweedledee, Tweedledum. And then I'm going to read the tweet that Rome posted because I took a screenshot of it, or I didn't, but somebody else did. So Rome said, "I could get messy, but I'll keep it simple. No, that wasn't it," referring to the Tweedledee, Tweedledum. "Lying about something so serious that production has to edit around is something I would never do. Kyle can lie all he wants about it to the public. Production and Jeff know the truth, and that's all that matters to me." So, like you said, Blake, if Kyle was this bad guy, production would not have seemingly went out of their way to present him to us as a really wholesome, great guy, right? That would not have happened. They would have made a mockery of Kyle. They would have, honestly, knowing how they've handled some situations in the past, they might have tried to make a lesson out of whatever Kyle said.
Well, and CBS has done that not only on Survivor, but I know I talk about Big Brother from time to time, but they have done that in Big Brother, where I don't think they actually said they pulled somebody from the game, but they have removed somebody from the game, and they said, "Hey, they will no longer be here." Now, yeah, it's just I don't think in today's day and age, with as quote unquote woke as everybody is, that CBS would have allowed that to happen and not made an example out of it if that was potentially going to come out, because that would look bad for CBS, that would look bad for Survivor. So I don't believe a word of it, honestly.
Well, that
And
and he was, like you said, Brandon, Rome was voted out pre-merge, correct?
yes.
Um, so he was voted out pre-merge. Everybody that is on the jury, everybody that is still in the game was around when Kyle was, and when Kyle and Rome were. If I feel like something was said that was that bad or that controversial or anything like that, I feel like there would be more people talking about it that were in the game. The fact that nobody else and even Gabe came to the defense of Kyle, and man, you're just kind of like, you're Rome, you're talking crazy. Like, there's
Yeah.
clearly a disconnect here.
Well, what I see, and unfortunately, like particularly with like where social media is right now, like got to stay relevant, trying to keep our 15 minutes. Like, and I think this is a case. Rome is just trying his best to stay relevant, trying to stay in the public eye, try to keep people thinking about him. And unfortunately for him, like he's just being seen in a negative light. And really, for somebody that when he got voted out, you know, I thought maybe had the potential to return on season 50. Now, I'm not sure anybody really would want anything to do with playing with Rome or production wanting to deal with Rome, because this is just like, what are you, what are you doing? Like you're going out of your way, and we don't know, like we don't know Kyle, we don't know Rome, we don't know what was or wasn't said, but if something happened, I would think that other people on the cast, you know, if they didn't take action on the island, would be coming out in support of what Rome's saying and saying, yes, this happened. Yes, that happened. But instead, you have, at least like you said earlier, Gabe going out of his way to defend Kyle. And if you're going to tweet something like what I tweeted or what I read and then delete it, well, goodbye to your credibility.
Mm-hmm.
100%. Well, let's get back to this week's episode. Let's talk about the challenges. So we had 2 challenges. We had an immunity challenge, obviously, and then, but before that, we had a reward challenge. And this is kind of where the game changed, was that the reward challenge. And we can get into the challenge itself, but Sam won, and the reward was Italian food, a ton of Italian food at the sanctuary, and then also an overnight at the sanctuary. And then after he had won, then Jeff told him that it was also letters from home. So Sam got to choose 2 people. So he chose Andy, who he said he had promised to take, and he had talked like he had decided to take Andy no matter what. So there was kind of a reckoning there, or like a rekindling of a relationship there. And then he also chose Genevieve, and that's kind of where everything broke loose. So obviously, with how much we liked the episode, but did you like Sam's reasoning for choosing those 2 people?
I think it was smart, especially the position Sam and Genevieve were in, being on the bottom, not having a ton of options there, and knowing knowing Andy. I feel like with him kind of flip flopping back and forth, knowing that, hey, if I can rekindle something here, this is probably a good person to bring on that reward with. I think. And I think what Sam even said at the reward to Sam, to Andy, saying, "Hey, I didn't treat you the best at the beginning. I didn't do some of these things." I think that went a long way, even in the sense of when Genevieve said those things to Andy as well earlier in the episode. I think all of that combined really, really made a difference for the rest of the outcome. If those things weren't said, yes, it still could have happened, but I think those things all really, really helped.
Well, you could read it on Andy's face whenever Sam said that to him. It was like, wow, like that. Well, one, he was surprised when he was chosen. And he even said, I was the last person that I thought would get chosen for this. And then when Sam said that at the reward, it was like, man, that really means a lot to me. And it was after that is when Andy kind of brought up his plan. So I think you're spot on. I think without those two, it still maybe could have happened, but I doubt Andy would have wanted to work with the two of them if those two little conversations hadn't been had as well as they were.
So I was actually going to ask you guys. There was something that Andy said when he was pitching the Operation Italy plan that almost made me think that he wanted to do this with them, whether he went on a reward with them or not. Like, it almost felt like he was like, I kind of want to shake up the game again. Here's my thoughts. Obviously, Genevieve and Sam are the only two people he can pitch that to. Like, I don't know if you guys caught that or if I'm just overthinking it, but it felt to me like and maybe it was because of the conversation he had with Genevieve that kind of opened his mind to that. But it felt to me like this was something that he had thought about for a while. Because that was I've already said it in the episode, like, very elaborate plan.
Yeah, I don't disagree. Andy's whole game, I feel like, has been kind of flip-flopping, and he's kind of going wherever he sees the best opportunity. So it almost, I don't disagree. It almost seemed like he had thought this out a little bit, but the fact that it all came together perfectly is why I could have very easily seen him not make that move. Because if he did and it didn't work out well, like, goodbye, Andy. Right?
And then,
So
yeah,
I
and
don't know.
Genevieve even mentioned something like that. Was like, is this going to work? Is Andy going to stay? Is like aligned with us? If he doesn't, because of if it doesn't work, that puts him in a awful spot. Is he going to stay with us? So
Yeah. Well,
there was so much up in the air.
yeah, but the beauty of that plan is like, or the interesting thing about that plan is like Sam and Genevieve have nothing to lose by doing that. Like, other than if it doesn't pan out, one of them goes home. But Andy has everything to lose.
Right.
So, like, if you're gonna pitch it, you almost have to stick with it, because, like, we don't know what's gonna happen next week, but it could have easily, like, if Genevieve goes home or Sam goes home, like, very next week, whoever stayed could have been like, you guys know that Andy was like pitching you guys hard. So, like, he put himself in a really vulnerable spot.
Sure.
Yeah. And I think he still is in a little bit of a vulnerable spot because now
I'd
it's
agree.
3-3. Rachel has an idol. Sue has an idol. But Rachel also has block a vote. So
Yeah.
they still technically have majority.
Mm-hmm.
So do they go after Sam, or not Sam? Do they go after Andy for flopping? I think he still is in a fairly vulnerable spot.
Think about this. This is a massive hypothetical. So let's say next week, one of three players wins immunity: Rachel, Teeny, or Sue. Okay? Rachel, Teeny, Sue wins immunity. You have two hidden immunity idols. You could play both of those idols on the two players that didn't win immunity, and then just say good luck to Sam, Genevieve, and Andy. Figure it out.
Yeah.
Oh, and yeah, like, because everything has to be used next week, right?
I think so.
Yeah. So you might as well.
I think
No, it's top 5.
I think the block of vote has to be used next vote.
correct.
Okay.
But to go along with your hypothetical, if Sue plays her idol for herself, Rachel plays her idol for herself, somebody else different than those two win immunity, and then you also have a block of vote, who knows what that's going to look like? And that's where I think now that everybody on the beach knows that Rachel has a block of vote, like she has to be public enemy number 1, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now nobody knows that she has an idol. That's not. Does she? No,
I don't
she
think
told
anybody knows.
Sue.
I don't think anybody knows she has an idol.
So yeah,
Mm-mm.
she told Sue that she had the block the vote. That was kind of how she built that relationship with Sue, and then she told everybody else after that. And then other than Caroline, who's now out, nobody knows Sue has an idol either. So things could get really shaken up really quickly, and the plan could go awry really quick.
I mean, for all we know, I don't think it's going to happen, but for all we know, Teeny or Sue could get pulled in by Sam, Genevieve, and Andy. Because Sue doesn't have a home now. Teeny probably is too angry at them to go over there, but the
Yeah,
three outsiders and Andy, Genevieve, and Sam might be like, hey, we got to go have a conversation with Sue. Of course, Sue's probably pissed and won't want anything to do with it. So,
but if you know that, Rachel has all of these advantages, it's like, I don't know. It this week I think did a really good job of shaking up the rest of the game, because if it would have been Sam or Genevieve, I feel like we would have almost known how the rest of the votes would have gone. Downhill from there.
Whenever the reward challenge ended and I was looking at Sam and Genevieve and then Andy and then the people that were standing on the other side, I was like, they need to figure something out, because right now it sounds negative and it is negative, but I'm like, we're looking at an island of misfit toys finishing out this game. And quite honestly, like, probably a pretty boring ending to the game. Like, Caroline, great under the radar player. Sue, attached to Caroline. Rachel, under the radar. Teeny, none of them are flashy, right?
Yeah.
So we were almost set up for a potential stinker of a finale.
Yeah. And I like Rachel and I like Caroline.
I like all of them.
But you're spot on. It was just not, I don't know. Yeah, I think a stinker of a finale is a great way to describe it. Absolutely. I don't know if you saw the tweet tonight, but Sam tweeted out and said, by the way, just know that if myself or Caroline would have won that immunity challenge, that would have ruined, Sam or Genevieve would have won the immunity challenge, that would have ruined everything. So that tells me they threw the challenge. They had to have, which is crazy. Like, to know, like, I could guarantee my safety potentially. Would they have won it? Maybe, maybe not. But to intentionally not win is wild at this point in the game. So that's how confident they were that, hey, this is our only shot.
Yeah. And I love that, Rachel was obviously the initial target. She won immunity. And I love that they were just like, nah, all right, we'll just go after somebody else.
Yeah.
Because at first I was like, oh, Dream's dead. But then I was like, oh, they'll just change the target.
it almost sounded like they had a backup plan in case that did happen. Like, it wasn't like it was just like a spur of the thing of like, who should we go after next? It's almost like they had, okay, if Rachel wins immunity, who are we going for next? And it almost seemed like that was a part of the plan the entire time.
Well, they even
Um,
said that. They said the beauty of Operation Italy was the fact that it's flexible. Like, we don't have to go after that person. It's not contingent on Rachel. So I personally would have, I wish Teeny would have gone home instead of Caroline, but way better for them to get Caroline out. She was the better player between the two of them, in my opinion. But
Agreed.
I am very curious where Sue is going to land on all of this, because I think she's going to be bitter. But now she has nobody. So you almost have to kind of let bygones be bygones and move on. That's just not how she's played the game up until this point. So I don't know what that's going to look like.
Honestly, her and I think Teeny both. I mean, yes, Teeny has Sue to a point. I don't feel like she's super close with them, and she clearly doesn't like Genevieve or Sam. And I don't feel like she's gonna like Andy now because he flip flopped. So I feel like Teeny's even in an interesting spot as well. Not quite as much as Sue, but I think she's kind of in a awkward.
I wonder if that'll bring Teeny down to earth a little
That's
bit.
literally what I was gonna say. Like, I think she'll just go back to like, I'm Teeny.
Like, whoa,
Mhm.
maybe I
I'm
need
here.
to
Yeah.
maybe I need to get off my, like, quote unquote power trip that I was on last week, and I've got to, like, I clearly don't know. I'm not in as good of a position as I thought I was. I got to go back to the drawing board. So that kind of seems like where Teeny has been all season, in my opinion. So I'm not as concerned with that, but I have no idea.
You know what's frustrating though about Teeny is, man, I feel like she was right there this week of like, something's up. Like,
Mhm.
just seemed like she was on to it and then just didn't do anything with it. And that's just been Teeny's game the entire season of like, you could be great, but you're not being proactive. Like,
Yeah.
you have
You see these
opportunities.
clues.
You
Yeah, you
don't
see these
take
clues.
your destiny into your own hands. You're just letting other people play the game for you. You had an opportunity to do something. Like, what are you doing?
Well, and I think it was a little bit of bad luck too, and a good luck on Genevieve's part, where whenever she showed her the idol, because I'd be curious to know if showing the idol was a part of the plan, because
It
it
was.
almost seemed like Genevieve um, and Sam talked about that without Andy. But then
Oh, yeah.
when she showed Genevieve, and then all of a sudden Andy walked up, she like threw it in her pocket and ran away. Like, I I don't know.
It-
Part of me has a hard time believing that, okay, Andy, we're gonna show her this idol, and then you walk up. It was like the perfect, oh man, I've gotta take off on Genevieve's part,
It
and gave Teeny just a glimpse of that idol, and it was just enough to raise some suspicion. And I don't know.
it didn't seem like that. It didn't seem like Andy walking up was planned.
Right.
So I think you're right that Sam and Genevieve, were like, let's talk to Teeny and get her, wheels turning about Genevieve having an advantage. But yeah, it could not have worked out better because I don't know if Teeny would have thought it was real or not. But the fact that, and correct me if I'm wrong, but she got a glimpse of the idol. She didn't even take that info back to the tribe, right?
Not that we saw.
Yeah.
Not that we saw.
But
And I mean,
the
she
fact
even
that
asked.
the fact that they ended up splitting the votes when everybody seemed like they were against that towards the end almost tells me that, okay, maybe she does have an idol.
Yeah.
So I don't know. We just didn't see her talk about it.
And I mean, in that sense, I feel like okay, yeah, if she does have an idol, make it think it's her, put at least just one vote on her, and then vote Sam. I mean, it's still going to flush it out, and then you don't have this situation happen. Obviously, they don't know about the plan and all, but I don't know. It amazed me that it worked and went through the way it was planned. One of the greatest moves, like we've said, of all time.
And there were so many opportunities for it to go wrong, right? So
Mhm.
Rachel could have used her block a vote. They could have thrown all the votes on one person. They could have Sue could have played her idol on Caroline. And it was like as soon and that conversation between Sam and Sam and Genevieve, I keep saying Caroline, but Sam and Genevieve at Tribal, when he was like, Genevieve, like, play it, and she was like, no, I think I'm good. I think that was enough for Sue to say, yeah, I'm not playing this on Caroline. Like, I'm confident. And it was just enough to, like, okay, we're good, and feel confident, and then out the door.
And that's what I kind of talked about of Genevieve making that decision not to play the fake idol. Because I think if she turned around and played that, then other people would have said, I've got to go play mine, because they were worried about going home. And her not playing that keep other people from playing it.
Yeah. I mean, she can't play it. She could, but that would call their whole bluff.
Yeah, it wouldn't have
Right.
done anything.
Yeah.
Right.
But talking about it openly on like,
Mhm.
no, I think I'm good. Like,
Yeah.
and
Mhm.
now if there's any thought at all that it might be real, like, does Teeny think, holy crap, maybe she does have an idol and she's just that confident. So now everybody thinks that Genevieve has an idol for next week. Like,
Mhm.
that's another kind of
Yeah.
twist in this whole thing that I don't know that anybody has an answer for.
Yeah. Funny enough, that the fact that she still has it in her pocket, that never even crossed my mind. So I'll be interested in that for
Yeah.
sure.
With the fake idol, I thought it was pretty smart of Teeny to ask her, do you have the paper? To like just verify that. And the way that it played out was it worked out in Genevieve's favor. But for Teeny to ask her, like, hey, do you have the paper of what happened? Like, that was a great question. Like, a
Mhm.
lot of people don't ask that. Like, people are just like, oh my gosh, you've got an idol. But they don't confirm, oh, is it a real one? You know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the nice thing about that idol was that it technically was a real idol, but it was expired, right?
Yeah, and she
Yeah, but
just changed it up a little bit.
Mhm.
So I mean, she had something to go off of
Mhm.
and to make it look as real as possible. So
Yeah.
I don't know, that it was just awesome all the way around. So I mean, as far as like stock up, I mean, I feel like Andy, Sam, and Genevieve,
Oh yeah.
everybody else's stock decreased. I don't think.
Like collective stock
Yeah,
up survivors of the week for me.
yeah. The only person that I don't think changed at all, well, maybe a little bit, but was Rachel. I think Rachel's still in a good position, and I don't think she's necessarily any worse off. Um, she's not with the majority anymore, but
Still has a
other than
ton of
that,
power.
yeah. So she's the only one that I think kind of skirted by, not going up, not going down, but everybody
Yeah.
else took massive swings this week.
Yeah. And I think the interesting thing about Rachel is she has those two advantages, but she's also shown now like she can win challenges. So nobody else has really been outside of Sue has been an immunity threat that
Yeah.
I know of. So
And if Sam could stop winning reward challenges and start winning immunity, like, he can win challenges, just not
yeah,
immunity when it counts. So are we all on board that Andy is survivor of the week?
100%. Yep.
100%.
Maybe survivor of the season, but we'll see. 2 more weeks left.
Yeah.
Which
And again, I will say, sorry, go ahead, Logan.
next 2 episodes are both 2 hours long, correct?
Correct.
Yep.
No. And I will say again, good on you, Brandon, for seeing the potential in Andy long before the two of us did. But this week it was like, man, I really, really like this guy. And I'm almost curious to go back and listen to the first 3 weeks of this season's podcast, because we were not high on Andy at all.
No.
Like felt like he was kind of an idiot. and he sometimes he's played that role and he's played it well, but he is I don't know, maybe turning out to be my favorite player this season.
I would say yes. I'm mad at myself that I didn't pick him to win.
Yeah.
I feel like you almost did.
I might have almost, but he's just so easy to root for. Like, and so entertaining.
When we've talked for how many seasons that we like that kind of redemption story.
Mm-hmm.
And we even said after, what was that? Was that the first episode where he kind of had his meltdown?
Yeah.
And I was like, maybe this is the redemption story. I doubt it, because, you know, he's kind of a train wreck, but we'll see. And sure enough, like, he's turned it around. I don't know. It's just been so much fun.
It's tough. And Survivor might do this to us on purpose, but like his first episode, he reminded me of Brandon from, I think, season 45, the guy that couldn't climb the ladder, was like just not physically fit enough to be on the island. That's who he reminded me of in that episode. So I was like, screw this guy, like, bad casting again.
Yeah.
But then he's just blossomed into Survivor great, in my opinion.
Yeah. What do you guys think, at least up until this point? Because I said earlier that I think this might be my favorite season of the new era. Where does this land up until this point for you guys as far as seasons go since season 41?
For me, I think it's up there towards the top. I think the level of gameplay we've had, and it almost being a more level playing field throughout the entire season, where we didn't have just one tribe running away with it, to seeming like a tribe hasn't had to do anything until merge. Like, we've had consistent gameplay all season, and from the people to the moves to blind sides, I mean, it's been a phenomenal season. I honestly, probably, I would say my favorite.
I'll stick with the 3 seasons that we've covered, because I'm thinking like 41 and 43, probably my least favorite seasons in the new era. 42 was good. 44 with Carolyn, like, was good. I don't know if it was necessarily great, but like season 47 has the best gameplay of the new era. Season 46 probably had the most drama, might have been the most entertaining, just from like individual players both in and out of the game. Like, I just seeing all of the stuff that happened on social media, and just, like I said, individual characters, memorable characters, Q, Charlie, Kinsey, Maria, Ben,
Jelinski,
first boot legend, still relevant today.
He even tweeted out saying that there were several players left today.
Yeah. And then season 45, dominance from one tribe, from the Reba tribe, D, Austin, Drew, Julie. So just in the 3 seasons we've covered, like 3 just completely different types of seasons.
Hmm.
But I think you're right, Blake. 47 is probably the best of the new era, and for me, it just comes down to gameplay. Like,
Yeah.
we even said it last week. Like, the obvious choice to go home after Kyle was voted out was Sam or Genevieve, and that didn't happen. And that's been the theme the entire season, where it's 2 or 3 names, and Survivor history would tell you, if it's between Kyle and Sam, if it's Kyle this week, it's Sam next week, right? And that's the fact that that's not been how it is this season, like, puts it up top. The fact that there's no dominant alliance, players are willing to just kind of move and actually play their game for the most part. And then I completely just lost my train of thought. But and then sorry, there it is. I got it back. Stay with me, everybody. But took you on a journey for a second. But when names have come up, like I said, it's usually 1 player, 2 players. Like, we've seen as many as 6 names come up for a player to potentially be voted out. We've seen up to 4 players at one point, and I just love. It's a great season, yes.
Yeah.
I love going into tribal council not knowing who's going home.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that majority of these, it's not been a this person's going home. It just adds. I mean, you said it and I said it. The gameplay, it just adds so much, and I love it.
No, absolutely. Let's talk about jury for a minute. Do you think that the jury is going to look kindly on Andy for flipping as consistently as he does?
That's one issue I think I have with Andy, and what I'm worried about with him winning, because typically in the past, I don't feel like the jury has loved players that flip-flop. I feel like a lot of people want to see that loyalty and some of those things. I do think if Andy is able to talk about his game, why he did those things, and what he did in flip-flopping better set him up for getting to the end, and some of those, I think it could be fine and he could win at that point. But I am a little nervous for the jury seeing you're just flip-flopping back and forth. But if he can speak to it, I think he's good.
And I think he can speak to it, and I think
Mhm.
it'll come up. Hey, you never landed with an alliance. You were kind of all over the place. You were back and forth. I think for me, if I'm him, I'm thinking I kept doing this. You guys never took me seriously, never looked my way. You could have voted me out, but you didn't. You kept saying other people were other threats, and what you just kept failing to realize that I was the threat in the game. And there you all are. Here I am. That, to me, it's a simple sell.
I think so too. And I think loyalty is great when you're on top and can control the game, like D and was it Austin? And like that alliance there. That's great. But if you're not on top, then it doesn't do you any good. And so, and on the flip side of that, Andy's tried to be a part of every alliance. Like, he has tried to find a home, and he's almost flipped out of necessity on, like, hey, I see an opportunity and I'm going to take it. And you see in the confessionals that he is a very eloquent speaker. I mean, he doesn't come off as like brilliant as Genevieve does, but I think he will be able to almost like dumb his game down enough to make it seem like I knew what I was doing the entire time. And he's been able to speak to that. This isn't the first time that he has done that. When was it when they were still with like the individual tribes? He
Mhm.
kind of laid I forget what exactly that move was, but he kind of laid all the pieces out to like, hey, I'm gonna cast some doubt here with everybody and do this strategically. Like, this is not the first time he has made a move like that. And I think he can speak to that, hey, my game wasn't just this move. I've been doing this over and over and over again. I don't know that he's going to have a problem with it. I don't know.
I don't think he will. Um, it's wild. He flipped on Sam and Sierra at the beginning of the merge, and now he's back with Sam. It's crazy. But also another reason why this season's so great is because for the most part, nobody's like just closing the door on the idea of working with somebody that
Yeah.
they were working against at one point.
It seems like everybody is in the mindset of what can I do to better myself to get to the end, and not just going with the majority or closing the door and not working with a person because you don't like them like you said, for the most part, but having the open mind and what can I do to better my game to get me to the end. It seems like almost everybody's playing that way.
I think that's my favorite part about the new era is the voting blocks. You no longer have your alliance that you're voting with and you count on one or two people to flip over to give you the majority when you need it. Every single vote, you've got a different group of people that you're voting with. And those voting blocks are, I don't know, it's been my favorite evolution of the game.
I would agree. Well, I mean, I think I don't know if Survivor survives if changes like that don't happen. If it was just and I think this also might be why Survivor does the 3-tribe pre-merge, even though, it's not really a fan favorite, but I think 2 pre-merge tribes kind of created that tribal mentality, obviously, going into the merge where like these are my numbers, these are my people, I'm not flipping. And then it's just, majority tribe just one by one picks off tribe with less people.
To elaborate on that further, like Logan, you said earlier, the fact that all 3 tribes had to play the game before the merge, and you didn't have just one, that was down to 1 or 2 people before, or I guess, yeah, it would come down to 2 people before the merge, because then you still have the 2 tribes that are fighting over those 2 people. The fact that everybody came in with approximately the same amount of people on their tribe to the merge was, I think, awesome this season. So
Yeah.
I don't know.
And I actually, when you asked, what's the best season of the new era, that actually didn't cross my mind, the pre-merge, just because like pre-merge has for the most part been pretty like not great just because of the dominance of one tribe. And like I remember, I think we said it on the podcast, but like I was actually enjoying pre-merge this season, and like wasn't like when the merge happened I was like, oh, it's the merge, like that's cool. But this, I was kind of liking these stories where previously it's been like, finally the merge, we can do away with that nonsense. So just another reason for 47 to be great.
Absolutely. Well, Brandon, do we have any mail this week?
We don't have any mail this week, but we're gonna keep plugging. So if you have anything you want to say to us, questions, ideas, comments, feedback, email us at themergefeastpodcast@gmail.com. and your email will be read by one of us on the show.
I would love to hear from people at the end of next episode to see, because we'll be down to final 5, to hear who everybody thinks is going to win out of those final 5. So even if you text one of us, if you don't want to send an email, I would love to hear from the people listening who you guys think is going to win.
I think that's a great idea.
Okay. Well, last thing for me, since I just said that, who do we think have to pick a winner right now? Who are you picking? Is it Andy?
I
Locked it in. Yep.
think I'm gonna go with Rachel.
I think I'm going to go with Genevieve.
Okay.
What? Now I'm curious on your guys' reasoning. Logan, why do you think Rachel?
Not that the path to the end is ever easy, but with what she has, advantage-wise, idol, she's been dominant in challenges. She's had a great game. She's played a great game. She's made moves. She's been on the bottom. She's on the top. Like, I just think everything that she's done, she's had enough there to be able to win at the end. But I think here going forward, it almost seems like her path is possibly I don't know if I want to say the easiest, but maybe the clearest, because she does have the idol. She has the block of vote. She's been dominant in challenges, and she could not win the next challenge and be. I mean, you never know, but I just think with what she has left to play, to get to the end, to be able to pitch her game, looks easier than other people.
And with those advantages, she definitely has the most potential, I feel like.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, the fact that she was able to win the steal or the block of vote by completing that challenge, get the hidden immunity idol. Nobody has any clue about it. Just several things that she's doing. I don't know.
My only thing with the advantages, and I've said this before, but more importantly than having the advantages is using the advantages properly to further your game. So I trust that Rachel will do that. She's a very smart player, obviously, but she's running out of time, and I kind of hope my hypothetical that we talked about earlier in the show is what ends up happening.
Yeah.
I think Andy, for me, I was a little hesitant because while I think, I've been kind of Andy's number one fan on this podcast, but there's still like a part of me that is like waiting for the other shoe to drop or just waiting for it to blow up. But I think if he gets to final 3, that alone might be enough to win him the game. Obviously, he probably will have to do some a lot of explaining, obviously, because he does have those people underestimating him. But I think if he gets to the end and Genevieve and Sam aren't sitting with him, I think it's possible that they're not all 3 going to be there. But I think Genevieve and Sam could advocate for him to the jury and be like, yeah, he was a big part of this. He was a big part of that. He's the reason this happened. Without Andy, X, Y, and Z doesn't happen. That big move that we pulled on Caroline, that was Andy's idea. I just think, from going from 0 to hero, basically, and seeing how he's talks to the audience in confessionals, I think he is going to do a fine job of speaking to his game and being able to convince enough people that he should be the sole survivor.
Do you think it would benefit Andy's game to vote out Sam and Genevieve?
I think Genevieve, yes, because I don't know if he beats Genevieve. Sam, I think he can beat Sam because
And I do too. I just wonder
Mhm.
if them being in the jury would help him get some votes and help the jury sway in his direction.
Yeah. No, I think it would benefit him, yes, if he turned around and voted one of them out. But at the same time, that's also a risk.
Yeah.
To like, oh man, I thought, if he votes out Sam, like, I thought we were good now. Then you turn around and stab me in the back again. Here we are. So I don't think Sam's that type of guy, though. What about you with Genevieve, though, Blake?
I think it comes down to with her, she is. I don't think anybody would disagree that she is an incredibly smart player and a huge threat. And the fact that a player that is that high on the threat level and who has been in the crosshairs for so long has made it through so many tribals. If she can get to the end, I think she's smart enough to talk about how she navigated that, not only on the personal side and kind of elaborating on how she talked about this week, where, okay, I've got the strategy side, but I also have, the personal and the relationship side that I didn't really have a great gameplay until this moment. I don't know. I think she's just a good enough player that any time that you can overcome or get out of the crosshairs that many weeks in a row, it's just gonna be hard to beat.
Mm-hmm. My single concern with her is that she doesn't have the relationships. Obviously, that's deliberate, so she could probably speak to that. But that's like my one thing is like, Genevieve, what's my sister's name? If somebody asked her that,
Yeah. But do you think when that comes up, if she's able to admit, yeah, here's why I didn't play that way? Because when she talked about the Kashan vote and how she voted him out, and that kind of made her reevaluate how she was going to play the rest of the game, and I think communicate why she played the way she did, and then realizing towards the end of the game that, man, if I could go back and play differently, I probably would, and I probably would play the social side a little bit more, and I don't know, show some vulnerability there. And because a lot of times you get to the final three, and when they're talking about their gameplay, it's like, here's all the things I did really well, and here's why I deserve it. And I think for somebody to come in and say, hey, here's all the things that I did really well and why I deserve it, but here's also some areas that I didn't do well, and I'll own it, and I'm good with that, and show some humility on that side of things. And I think that's where she's excelling right now.
Mm-hmm.
It could kind of sway things to where it'll overcome some of that lack of personal touch.
Yeah. And I think she's doing a good job already of kind of planting those seeds, like explaining her game now so she doesn't have to later.
Yeah.
So, yeah. But man, I would not be mad in a world where Genevieve, Rachel, or Andy won. I'd be happy with all three of them.
Yeah.
I would be too. I think I would be a little upset if Sue or Teeny won, just because I don't think they had a great game, and I don't even know if they have a chance to win based on their gameplay. So I'm really honestly just excited for the final 2 episodes to see who wins. And I hope these last 2 episodes are as great as the rest of this season was, and I expect them to be. And I'm excited to wrap it up in a excited but also sad.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, season 48 already has a lot to live up to. So, well, anything else from you guys?
I don't think so.
Perfect. Well, that is all that I have as well. Join us again next week we'll have another episode out next Friday. So make sure you tune in, and excited to hear from you guys on who you think is going to win. So please share your thoughts with us. Email, text, I don't even care. Tweet us. But yeah, look forward to it. Go ahead and say goodbye, Logan.
Goodbye, Logan.